Love expressed through simple acts of kindness is the kind of love that does not demand attention, applause, or reward. It is the quiet power that moves unseen yet transforms everything it touches. When we look at the example of the Cunningham sisters in 1847, we see this truth lived out in the most beautiful and human way. They did not preach love from a pulpit or write it in grand declarations. Instead, they offered it with their hands, their time, and their presence. Each small gesture they made carried the weight of divine compassion, because real love is not measured by its size, but by its sincerity. Picture those early days of 1847. The world was uncertain, the roads were rough, and travelers came from far distances seeking rest, often weary, hungry, and alone. The Cunninghams saw not strangers, but souls in need of care. They offered what they had: a warm meal, a place to rest, a listening ear. To many, these may seem like simple, almost ordinary acts, but to those who received them, they were miracles in motion. Love was not in their words alone, but in their willingness to serve without question or hesitation. Kindness often looks small, but its reach is immense. The sisters did not perform grand gestures that made history books. They lived out daily compassion that shaped hearts. They understood that love is not limited by circumstance. You do not need abundance to share kindness. You only need willingness. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They acted in the moment, right where they were. Their love became a living sermon, one that preached louder than any voice could ever do. It was a sermon of bread shared, of comfort given, of hands extended. True love cannot be faked or forced. It grows naturally from a heart that sees others as worthy of care. The Cunningham sisters did not love because it was expected. They loved because it was who they were. Their actions reflected a deep inner truth that every person carries value, that kindness is the purest form of strength, and that serving others is not a duty but a privilege. Their small deeds created ripples of hope in times of hardship. In every act of generosity, they reminded others that goodness still existed in a weary world. There is something sacred about the simplicity of kindness. When we strip away titles, possessions, and status, what remains is the capacity to love. The Cunninghams embodied this truth. Their compassion did not come from wealth or position, but from a heart open to God and to people. When they offered food or comfort, they offered dignity. When they listened to the burdens of others, they offered peace. Their kindness was not a performance. It was an extension of their faith. It flowed naturally because it was rooted deeply in love. Love expressed through small acts often goes unnoticed by the world, yet it is noticed by heaven. The sisters' quiet service spoke louder than sermons and carried further than words. They did not build monuments, they built moments of mercy, connection, and care. And through those moments, they revealed the face of divine love. When people left their home, they carried not only full stomachs or rested bodies, but renewed hearts. They left knowing they had been seen, valued, and loved. In their example, we find a lesson that transcends time. Love does not always roar, sometimes it whispers. It does not always shine from the grand stages of life. Sometimes it glows softly in kitchens, porches, and humble homes. The sisters' legacy reminds us that simple acts, offering a seat, sharing a meal, giving a word of encouragement, can become the hands and feet of God in a world desperate for compassion. It teaches that even the smallest act, when done with great love, carries eternal significance. Hospitality as a reflection of true faith is one of the most profound and practical ways to reveal the heart of God to the world. It is more than opening a door, it is opening a heart. When the Cunningham sisters of 1847 welcomed weary travelers, they did not simply offer shelter. They offered a sacred experience of belonging. Their home became more than a dwelling. It became a living altar where faith took on flesh. In every gesture of care, every meal prepared, and every word spoken with tenderness, they turned ordinary moments into divine encounters. They lived what they believed, showing that faith is not just a doctrine to be recited, but a life to be lived in service to others. In their world, faith was not a private matter hidden behind closed doors. It was visible, tangible, and alive in how they treated others. The sisters' hospitality was not limited to those who shared their beliefs or background. It reached beyond boundaries of culture and class. They welcomed the traveler, the stranger, the lonely, and the poor. Their faith did not ask, "Are you worthy?" It asked, "How can I serve you?" That is what makes hospitality holy, when love extends beyond comfort and preference, when it moves us to embrace the unfamiliar and to give without expecting return. Their home was a sanctuary of grace, not because it was grand or beautiful, but because it was filled with the spirit of genuine welcome. True faith expresses itself not only through prayer and worship, but through action. When the Cunninghams opened their door, they were living the very heart of the gospel. Their service was not a performance for recognition. It was an offering to God. Every loaf of bread shared, every bed prepared, every smile given was a declaration of what they believed, that God's love is best demonstrated through human kindness. Their hospitality became a testimony, one that spoke louder than sermons and softer than judgment. In a world often divided by fear and suspicion, their faith invited connection and healing. Hospitality reveals the character of one's faith because it requires humility and sacrifice. It demands that we make space, not just in our homes, but in our hearts. The sisters' faith was not distant or theoretical. It was deeply practical. They made room for others even when it meant giving up their own comfort. They shared from what they had, not from excess, proving that faith is not about abundance of possessions, but abundance of love. Their hospitality reflected trust in God's provision. They gave freely, believing that every act of generosity would be met with divine sufficiency. In this way, their faith grew deeper with every open door and every shared meal. What made their hospitality so powerful was its sincerity. It was not duty-driven but devotion-driven. They saw each guest as a child of God deserving of care and respect. Their faith was not loud or boastful, yet its quiet strength transformed lives. Those who entered their home encountered more than food or rest. They encountered the presence of Christ in the kindness extended to them. For the sisters, faith was not something to be spoken about, but something to be shown. Their actions were their witness. Their home became a living example of Scripture in motion, a place where words like "love your neighbor" and "welcome the stranger" were not merely quoted but lived. There is something sacred in turning the ordinary act of hospitality into a spiritual expression. When we welcome others with genuine warmth, we mirror the divine invitation of God, who welcomes us despite our flaws. The Cunningham sisters understood that to serve others is to serve God Himself. Their home reflected heaven's generosity, not through grandeur, but through grace. In their faithfulness, they created a legacy that whispers through time, a reminder that faith is not measured by how much we know, but by how much we give. Their hospitality became the outward reflection of their inward faith, a light shining quietly yet powerfully in the hearts of all who came their way. The lasting impact of compassion beyond generations is one of the most powerful truths found in the story of the Cunningham sisters. What they did in 1847 may have seemed small at the time, opening their home, sharing their food, comforting weary travelers, yet the influence of those acts extended far beyond their lifetime. Compassion, when practiced sincerely, does not fade with the passing of years. It plants seeds in the hearts of others that continue to grow long after the original act is done. The sisters may not have known it, but every gesture of love they offered became part of a chain of kindness that stretched into the future. Each visitor they helped carried forward a piece of their spirit, sharing it in new places, with new people, in new ways. True compassion never dies because it changes the very fabric of human hearts. It transforms both the giver and the receiver. The Cunninghams' compassion did not just ease temporary suffering. It awakened something deeper in the people they touched. It inspired gratitude, faith, and hope in those who might have lost all three. A traveler who was hungry found not only food but also dignity. A stranger who felt forgotten found belonging. These are the kinds of gifts that echo through generations, shaping families, communities, and cultures. The sisters' compassion became a living legacy, not because of fame or recognition, but because love leaves traces that time cannot erase. When compassion is genuine, it carries within it the power to reproduce itself. Those who receive love often feel moved to pass it on. The Cunningham sisters' kindness likely inspired countless others to show generosity in their own lives. It might have encouraged a traveler to show mercy to someone else down the road, or led a neighbor to open their door in a moment of need. This is how compassion multiplies, not through speeches or commands, but through example. One act becomes two, two become 10, and soon an entire community breathes with the rhythm of kindness. The impact grows quietly, invisibly, yet powerfully. There is something eternal about compassion because it aligns with the heart of God. When people act with mercy, they participate in something far larger than themselves. The sisters' compassion reflected this divine nature. They were not driven by reward or recognition, but by a faith that saw every person as worthy of love. Their consistency in caring for others built a legacy of trust and goodness that outlived them. Long after their voices were silent, their story continued to speak. People remembered the warmth of their welcome, the comfort of their words, the safety of their presence. Those memories carried more weight than any monument could ever hold. Generational impact often begins with unnoticed actions. The Cunningham sisters did not plan to make history. They simply responded to the needs before them. Yet their compassion created a ripple that time could not contain. It shaped how others viewed service, faith, and community. In every heart that heard their story, a spark was lit, a reminder that small acts, done with great love, hold the power to change the world. Compassion, when rooted in sincerity, creates a lineage of love that stretches across time. Each generation touched by it becomes part of the same story, carrying the torch forward. Even today, the message of their compassion remains relevant. The world may have changed in appearance, but the need for kindness is as strong as ever. When we read of the Cunninghams' acts of care, we are invited not just to admire them, but to imitate them. Their example becomes a challenge to live with the same open-heartedness in our own time. Compassion that endures is not confined to history, it becomes a living call to action. The impact of their lives proves that when love is genuine, it does not end with one lifetime. It travels through hearts, crosses generations, and becomes a heritage of goodness that never fades.